Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I look forward to this discussion. I'll give you a warning right up front that there's a lot of material that we're going to go through. And one of the purposes for offering the webinar as a recorded solution is that you can go back and review some of the things we talk about. And again, as RJ said, at the end of the session, we will give you an email address. So in the event you don't get your question answered, you can still pose that question to me. So today we're going to talk about the 7 online traps for kids, and we'll also pose a number of solutions to help you. Today's environment on the web is a perfect storm for kids online. The web can be very distracting. It can be corrupting. It can be victimizing. I say distracting because kids can get lost playing games and videos. It's corrupting because there's a lot of material that's inappropriate for children online. Victimizing because kids can become the victims of a number of different challenging things, which include cyberbullying and sexual predators. And we're going to talk about all of these topics today. 50% of kids say that parents talk with them about online risks. That means the other half of parents do not do that. I'm guessing that since you're on this webinar, you do care and you are interested in learning more and in speaking to your children, and that you're very open and upfront with them, and I applaud you for that. 44% of kids say their parents monitor their time spent online, and that's a good thing. We think that percentage should be higher. And with some of the solutions today that we suggest, you'll find additional tools to help you in that monitoring effort that you're doing. Research we found lately says or shows that kids spend an average of 7+ hours a day connected to digital devices. That includes smartphones and iPod touches and gaming consoles and other things, including the television set. But basically, that's all of their time after school, if you consider how much time you spend sleeping, eating, and going to school. But another study by AT&T said that 90% of kids like being told what the rules are and like being like knowing that they're being protected by someone. And so we suggest that you set and establish rules for your children because studies show that they do respond well to that, generally speaking. 83% of parents say they're worried about their child's online behavior, and we think this number is probably, well, pretty accurate. That's most parents, and that's because there are a lot of places where kids can get in trouble, either innocently or intentionally, but with social networks, with smartphones, with the internet, there are just so many places that you'd have to keep track of as a parent to really, understand what people are doing, what your kids are doing. So today we're going to give you some solutions that will help you respond to those feelings that you have that you'd like to be perhaps more in touch with your child's online behavior. And here's the challenge. There's so many devices, as we've mentioned. There's so many places a child can get access to the internet or get access to apps. And because pretty much everywhere you go today, you can attach to a Wi-Fi network. At a restaurant, at a hotel, at an airport, at a friend's house. Some children have phones that are attached to a carrier network like AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile and Sprint. But most of the time, kids can just hop off the carrier network and use Wi-Fi and be just fine. So that gives a lot of opportunity to get connected to the web. The 7 online traps that we're going to discuss today include the ones you see on screen. And because we're going to go through them, I won't read them now, but we'll go through them systematically. The first online trap we'll talk about is pornography, and that's because Nanny is known as a pornography filter. That's really where we gained our notoriety back in the mid-90s, and today we've expanded the product line, of course, but pornography is a big issue, as you know. Patrick Truman, the former chief of the U.S. Department of Justice, said that pornography is now more popular than baseball, and I'm going to show you why it is, or why he said that. If you look up the word pandemic, pandemic is a term that means an outbreak that's prevalent over a wide area, like a country or the world. It's a bigger issue than an epidemic. A pandemic is an epidemic that's gone even more viral, we'll say. The greatest pandemic of all time in the U.S. occurred about 100 years ago. It was an outbreak of influenza, and in that outbreak, 40 million people died, which represented about 38% of the U.S. population. The number I want you to remember, though, is 38%, because that was a devastating, terrifying pandemic, biggest and worst in the past 100 years. If you look at the numbers today of how many people are looking at pornography on the internet, the percentage of users is actually higher than the worst pandemic that ever occurred in the US. There are 68 million pornographic search engine requests every day. And some of the challenges are related to kids accidentally finding pornography by surfing the web or typing the wrong thing in or clicking on a YouTube link. So most children are exposed to pornography average at the age of 11 years old. And accidental exposure occurs to a majority of children. And that's a very terrifying statistic. Next, you have those who are actively looking for pornographic images, and 70% of young men between the age of 18 and 34 are looking at least monthly at pornography. And now there's a growing number of women who are becoming addicted. Most are between the ages of 13 and 30, and they're drawn to pornography for emotional reasons, while men are drawn to pornography for more visual reasons. But the research is showing today that pornography really acts like a drug. It triggers addictive chemical responses in the brain, such as would alcohol or drugs. And the challenge is that it rewires the decision-making part of the brain. And so very limited exposure to pornography can create a problem even for a young child. And that's the reason for taking proactive action to helping your kids stay away from it. For Nanny, we have a product which is Nanny for Windows. And that product is not like all of the other products on the market. It doesn't keep a big database of all website addresses waiting for you to type in that address and then blocking that web address. What it does is it looks at every single web page you attempt to go to. And that's important because there are websites like Wikipedia who would normally not be blocked by other third-party internet pornography filters. But there is pornography on Wikipedia. In fact, of the top 1,000 most viewed pages on Wikipedia, I think about 90% have seductive or pornographic images on those pages. So for user-generated content like Wikipedia, or the comments that people make on YouTube or other websites, or because of blogs, you really need a solution that will scan for user-generated content as well as all other content. Nanny will enforce the Google Safe Search function when you have pornography set to block. So that is another option to consider, that Google Safe Search and many other search engine sites like Bing will have their safe search mode turned on by Nanny automatically. If by chance, however, you want to make that, to turn on that on the safe search feature, I'm going to tell you how to do that in a couple of minutes. In terms of Android, mobile devices have created more of a challenge. They don't work the same way as Windows or Mac. On Android, for example, if you wanted to protect a child using an Android phone or Android tablet, you'd first have to install a safe browser, and there are a variety of safe browsers on the market, including Nanny. Then you'd have to lock out all other browsers, like the default browser that is installed on the device when you first get it. Because basically on Android, you can have 15 different browsers loaded if you want to. So you'd have to load a safe browser and lock out all other browsers. And then you have to go into settings and disable the ability to uninstall apps or to make modifications to apps that are running. And that sounds like a very complicated process to do all three of those things. In the case of Nanny for Android, it does all three of those things. It is a safe browser. It does lock out all other browsers that are loaded, and it does lock a child out of the settings menu where they can basically uninstall Nanny. They would have to have the password to be able to uninstall. And so for that reason, it is a great solution for parents whose children have Android tablets or phones. On an iPod Touch, iPhone, or iPad, we are more limited as a manufacturer of software by Apple's limitations in how we can develop. So basically with iPhone, iPod Touch, or iPad, you have to get a safe browser, and then you have to go into restrictions and turn off Safari, which is the default browser. You also have to turn off installing apps as an option, so kids can't reinstall Safari since you uninstalled it. So basically, it's a two-step process when you're dealing with Apple products. You have to install a safe browser. You then have to turn off Safari as a browser, and you have to turn off the ability to install apps. To make that a more simple process for you, we're going to show you how to do that for the iPhone right now. Basically, if you have an iPhone, iPad, or iPod Touch, there's a settings menu, which we circled here on the left, When you click on Settings, you'll see a menu that appears on the right. And if you go to General, which we've circled here in red, you'll then see a menu which you scroll down on. Down on the left, you'll see Restrictions as an option. When you click on Restrictions, you're asked to enable the restrictions. All you're asked to do at that point is put in a password. So by putting in a password, which you as a parent should keep from your child's access, you'll then be able to configure the following settings. Once you put in your password, you can turn off Safari. I suggest you turn off the ability to install applications. You'll want to do that because if a child has access to installing apps, they'll just reinstall Safari once you've turned it off. Or they can download other browsers. And I like to have control over what my children are downloading from the iTunes store because some of those apps have a cost associated. So I turn off installing apps as well. In addition, in that menu, you'll also see that you have the chance to turn off explicit language. And if you scroll down even further in that same menu under Restrictions, you'll see a number of other options that we highly recommend you at least look at. One is that you can turn off music and podcasts from being explicit. You can go to the Movies menu and select that this device that you're configuring only has access to PG or PG-13 movies. Same thing with TV shows, and with apps, you can determine how mature the apps you want your child to be able to download. And then in-app purchases, I turn off in-app purchases because I've had my children inadvertently download a free game, and then while they're playing the free game, they're charged for certain levels of the game or certain background colors or certain characters in the game. By turning off in-app purchases, you can basically protect your wallet because iTunes will basically just charge your account without you knowing about it. Let's go on to the next. I mentioned earlier that we're going to tell you how to turn on Google Safe Search, and that's a fairly simple thing to do. The fastest way to do it really is to go to your browser and type google.com/preferences. That's the quickest way to find this menu. Remember, NetNanny for Windows, Android, and iOS will enforce Google Safe Search. NetNanny for Macintosh doesn't do that yet. It will do that in the next 3 months, but it doesn't currently. So to manually lock Safe Search on the browser that you use on your device, go to google.com/preferences and turn on that feature. And then it's enabled. The next of the 7 online traps that we're going to discuss is YouTube. YouTube has become a place where people go and hang out for hours. It's a substitute for television sometimes. And young people today spend a lot of time on YouTube. That is a challenge, or can be. The problem with YouTube is that there are no reliable video filtering solutions on the market. We have looked for years to try to find a solution that will filter video. We've not found one to be reliable. Therefore, you're really 3 degrees of separation from inappropriate content. And what I mean by that is when you go to YouTube and you watch a video, on the right side of the screen, you'll see a number of suggested or recommended videos to watch. I've done testing wherein within 3 to 4 clicks, using those recommended videos that appear on the right, you can get into some trouble. You can get into some inappropriate, provocative, or even soft pornography videos very quickly. The other issue with YouTube is that users will make a bunch of comments. Sometimes they're profane. The good news is that NetNanny for Windows, Android, and iOS currently will mask profanity if you turn that setting on. So all profane words will appear like those special characters you see on the screen. But the challenge again with YouTube is there isn't really a safe and effective way to control it. However, you can turn on a feature in YouTube called Safety Mode. Now, I caution you that if you have a home computer where everyone accesses YouTube, you should use the browser that most people or everyone in your home uses to access YouTube, and then you as a parent log into that browser and then make the following changes I'm about to show you. Basically, YouTube Safety Mode is browser specific. So if your children use different browsers than you still need to log into each browser and make the change I'm about to recommend. That is, in the upper right corner of the screen, you'll see when you log in, the option to click on Settings. When you click on Settings, you'll see a menu that looks like this, and one of the options says Safety Off. At least it should be off if you've never turned it on. When you click on Safety On, you'll see a menu like this one where you can indicate that you want Safety Mode turned on. Now, what does Safety Mode do? Safety Mode will hide videos that have inappropriate content that other users have indicated is inappropriate. So YouTube isn't really into policing videos unless they're horrific, but other users will flag videos, and you're basically depending on other users' recommendations in this instance. But it's better than not turning on YouTube safety mode. Once you've turned it on and you click Save in the lower left corner of the screen, you have enabled YouTube safety mode for the browser that you're currently working or using. I would then recommend that you log out, and so that your kids don't have access to the admin, basically your password and username, to reconfigure safety mode. So turn it on and log out. Nanny for Windows, as I've mentioned, will filter comments, and it will block inappropriate text. It will turn on safety mode when the pornography filter is turned on by default. The other thing I would do if I were turning over a tablet or a PC to a small child is I would navigate into YouTube to a channel like Disney Channel or whatever channel it is you want your child to watch. Navigate there first, then turn over the controls to the child. You'll be more likely to keep them on that page if you do that. You can, with any NetNanny product or other filtering products on the market today, you can blacklist YouTube.com. If you really have a need to just shut it off, you can blacklist it and no one will have access to YouTube. On Mac, for our Mac product, you have to do basically what I said, which is to turn on safety mode in your browser, which we've just talked about, or you can blacklist YouTube, which we just talked about. With Android, you basically have to kind of do the same things we just discussed. You can block the YouTube app, then use NetNanny to browse the web to find YouTube, and then you're under the control or domain of NetNanny. So block the YouTube app and then have your kids navigate to YouTube through their browser. Again, you can turn on YouTube safety mode on the Android device, and it is browser specific. You can blacklist YouTube, as we talked about. And again, profanity masking in the Android product, turn that on so user comments don't come up and offend your child. In terms of the iPhone, one of the solutions that I recommend for YouTube on the iPhone is turn off the ability to install apps, which we just reviewed a few minutes ago, and then go to YouTube with the browser on your iPhone, turn on safety mode, log out, and basically you've protected your iPhone as far as you can. Let's now talk about number 3 on the list, cyberbullying. Bullies have been around forever, but now the turf is digital. And there are many ways, and we're going to discuss them, but there are many ways that kids can bully each other. The incidence of bullying occurs more greatly when children are really on the internet more and more. So when kids are on the internet 10 or more hours a week, they're more likely to be bullied. And how prevalent is bullying? Well, basically half of all kids say they've been bullied. And then there's half of all kids who say they've engaged in cyberbullying. Well over half of young people who are bullied do not tell their parents. They're worried about it, but they don't voice their concern. They're embarrassed. They don't want to get other people in trouble. They don't want to appear as a rat, we'll say. But basically, kids don't tell their parents when they've been bullied. So if you don't know that your children have been bullied, it's still possible that they have been. Fewer than 1 in 5 cyberbullying incidents are reported, and you can report severe cases of cyberbullying to law enforcement if you can't get that child or their parents to react to your request that the child leave your child alone. You always have the right to go to authorities and report an incident of cyberbullying. Cyberbullying victims, and you've read about them in the press most likely, there have been cases of children committing suicide because of cyberbullying or other types of self-harm. In all cases, it does affect self-esteem. So it is an important issue to be aware of. How do kids cyberbully each other? Well, they might upload a picture or video to embarrass the person they're taunting. They might create a fake Facebook account that looks a lot like the real account and then post inappropriate things or say inappropriate things. They might pretend to be the victim in a chat room and act in embarrassing ways. They can do that either by creating a screen name that's very similar to the victim or creating a Gmail or other email account that's very similar to the victim's. They can then also share the victim's personal info in a public forum, like on Facebook, for example. They could post rumors or lies about the victim in other public forums or other social networks. They could share embarrassing pictures of the victim in a public forum, like on Instagram or other places, or through email. They can use text messages or emails to send mean or demeaning or threatening messages. And so there are a lot of ways that kids can be bullied and conduct bullying. The actions that we recommend that you take, there are 5. Basically, you should address it immediately when you find out. And just speak openly and frankly with your child and get some details. And ask direct questions, because kids are not going to want to tell you about it. Ask about the history. See how long it's been going on, or if this is the first time. Next, get a clear understanding of how your child feels about this. And they're not going to want to be open with you typically about it. Are they annoyed? Are they scared? Do they feel threatened? Are they considering doing something to themselves because of the extent of the abuse? So basically, get a clear understanding of how the child is feeling. Then create a plan with your child. Your plan might might include speaking with school officials or teachers. It might include changing usernames or passwords. And in severe cases, perhaps, it might include talking to the child or the parents, of the bully. In any event, you should create a plan so that your child knows that there is proactive action being taken and that there is help on the way. Finally, if the incident warrants, if it's severe enough, degrading enough, harmful enough, seek medical help or counseling for your child. If you suspect any type of criminal activity, please notify local law enforcement. In terms of what you can do as a parent to kind of keep track of cyberbullying incidents, you could get social network software monitoring software. These types of software solutions are cloud-based. That means you don't have to install software anywhere. If your child accesses Facebook on their phone through an app, if they come home and access Facebook on their computer at home, if they borrow someone's tablet at school, if they get on the school computer, it doesn't matter how they access a social network. Social network monitoring software programs will keep track of them. In the case of the ones that we've looked at, these software solutions will help you as a parent monitor their friends, their pictures, and their posts, what they say. So you'll have the ability to see who your children are friending, see what your children are posting, see what your children are saying. And some of these solutions will trigger on keywords. So if someone says something negative to your child or threatening using certain keywords, you will be alerted by email that these things are happening in real time, and then you can take proactive stance or action. The software that we've looked at basically usually covers Facebook, and there aren't very many social network monitoring tools that cover more than Facebook, maybe Twitter. But there are lots of social networks out there. So there is a solution that we recommend, which is Nanny Social. Oddly enough, we have created this product to keep track of children on 7 different social networks. I'll go back to the list: Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Instagram, and Google+. There are other software solutions on the market like Zone Alarm's Social Guard, but I think it only keeps track of Facebook, and Social Shield, I think, is only a Facebook monitor. But you'll be able to keep track of your children's interactions with others using a tool like this. They're not expensive, and they're very proactive and productive. Let's now talk about sexual predators. That's a photo there of Ariel Castro, who was arrested in Cleveland earlier this summer for having abducted 3 girls and kept them hostage for 11 years while he tortured and raped them. Sexual predators are stalkers. And kids stalk each other these days. This is a joke that I've heard before, but I know a number of kids who will stalk other kids online, usually for reasonable reasons. But sometimes sexual predators will also stalk kids. Basically, they do. They do stalk children online. 1 in 5 kids between the ages of 10 and 17 have been solicited for sex online. That's 1 in 5. That means it's possible that your own child has been solicited. And then most of the kids who are solicited blow it off, don't think about it, don't tell their parents, or they are afraid to tell their parents. So you will not know about this if it's happening. Predators usually will look at a victim's likes and dislikes. They'll create their own profile for your child, and then when they interact with them online, they will pretend to be interested in the same things. 65% of predators found information on where a child lives, using their address, or where they go to school. And then they can use that as a method to kind of get in and build a rapport and build some trust. 25% of predators found the victim's whereabouts at a specific time. Because kids post way too much information online, they might indicate where they live and that they're out of town, or that they're currently having dinner at this place, or they're currently hanging out at another place. And so a sexual predator is enabled by Facebook and other social networks to find a child. What is the goal of a sexual predator? Well, some sexual predators are just collectors. They collect photos. They usually act out over time, but their main interest at first is collection. Others are looking for human trafficking victims. There was an article in the press about a gang in Virginia that was using Facebook to lure girls to the mall and then kidnap them and put them into the sex trade. And basically they use the same type of grooming methods as a sexual predator with a different end goal in mind, but it's basically the same thing. Build a rapport, build a relationship, then meet face-to-face. And again, as I've just said, meeting face-to-face really is one of the main goals of a predator. Dateline did some stories a few years ago where they trapped a number of men who were looking for children with whom to engage in sexual activity. It was a sting operation, and they arrested quite a few people. You may have seen some of those episodes, but that really is what happens in real life. We received a letter from one of our customers about 2 weeks ago where someone had attempted to friend their daughter on Facebook. The daughter agreed to friend that person because her other friends were a friend with that person. But the challenge was when Mom, who was using Nanny Social, determined that there was a new face in her daughter's group of friends that she didn't know, she questioned her daughter about that friend and found that the daughter really didn't know him, but thought that her friends knew him because they had friended him. When the investigation ensued, Mom found that this man was a registered sex offender and that he lived in the neighborhood. Children basically don't pay attention many times to who they're friending. They just go for the quantity of friends and not for the quality. But a sexual predator knows that, and he inserts himself into the picture and becomes a friend with at least one friend, and then it kind of just chain reaction occurs, and then no one's paying attention. In this case, Mom found this sexual predator through using Nanny Social. So again, we've talked about social network monitoring solutions. I won't really get into a lot of detail at this point. We've just talked about them, but they basically are cloud-based. They let you monitor your child's friends, pictures, and posts. They alert you for keywords, and they're really valuable tools these days. I've mentioned those 3 products already, so we're going to move on now to the challenge of sexting. Sexting is basically, by definition, that when you send or receive a sexually explicit message. These days, sexting has become a felony in many states, and that is because teens or children under the age of 18 are sending sexually explicit images. If you as an adult receive one of those images and keep it, even inadvertently or accidentally, you could be charged for possession of child pornography. So sexting has become much more of a serious issue, and children need to be aware of the ramifications of having either creating or distributing or possession of child pornography. 1 out of 3 teens have sent or received a sexually explicit message. Your child may be the recipient, and that's more likely than not what the case will be, but it is an issue to deal with or to talk about. Even parents, we heard the case of Representative or Congressman Anthony Weiner from New York, who was also caught sending explicit texts. Adults are even sending explicit texts. And so this is a major issue affecting many in the U.S. Almost half of kids say that at least their friend has received a sexually explicit picture, which really means if they say their friend, they're really talking about themselves usually. But it is widespread, the issue. How do kids send inappropriate text messages? There really are 3 ways. 2 of them are very similar. The first way, of course, is on a cell phone. When you have a data plan or a texting plan on your cell phone, you can send text messages. Now, if you have an iPod Touch or other device that doesn't have a carrier network associated with it, kids will hop over to Wi-Fi. They'll download a messaging app like WhatsApp or iMessage, and these 2 are very popular. I think WhatsApp has 300 million downloads. So that is one of the most popular text messaging apps. iMessage comes default many times on an iPhone or iPod Touch. There are other ways to send sexually explicit texts, and one way would be to use a product called Snapchat. Snapchat is quite popular. Kids are sending texts back and forth. Snapchat lets you send a text that will self-destruct within 10 seconds. So the ruse is that you think you can send something that's not very appropriate and have it be deleted. But there are cases in the press where kids receive a text in Snapchat that's not appropriate and just do a screen capture on your iPhone. All you have to do is hit the on-off button and the home button simultaneously. It takes a picture of your screen, and then you can upload that as a graphic somewhere else. So a Snapchat really doesn't disappear if you send it to somebody who knows how to screen capture. And in serious cases, the authorities have been able to take into custody an iPhone, for example, and hook it up to a computer and pull all the images off the hard drive of the iPhone. Snapchat images are never deleted from your iPhone's hard drive. They're only deleted from the app on screen. So you're really not safe there. Kids need to be aware that they really aren't able to fly under the radar, so to speak, in terms of sexting, and they need to be aware of the consequences. Now, how can you protect your child or yourself from sexting? In terms of apps like WhatsApp or Snapchat or others, when you have a smartphone like an Android device, you can use Nanny for Android or other app managers on the market and block those apps from your child's phone. If you don't block them, then you need to regularly review them with your child. In terms of an iPhone or iPod Touch or iPad, you basically have to uninstall those apps and then go into settings like I described earlier in the webinar and turn off the ability to install apps. That is the only effective way on an iPhone to do this. So you remove all the inappropriate apps and then turn off the ability to install apps after the fact. And make sure you use a password, otherwise your child will just download it again. So these are the challenges when you're talking about a smartphone. Now, what can you do with a cell phone when your child isn't using a messaging app, isn't using Snapchat? How can you monitor a teen's phone for text messages that are going over the AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile network? Well, there are a couple of solutions out there. For a phone, you can download an app such as SMS Tracker or Super SMS Monitor. These two apps, for example, and there are others, will send an alert to a parent on a different device of all incoming and outgoing texts on your child's phone. So these are kind of spying type tools that give you complete visibility into the texts that your child is sending and receiving. So these are a few ways you can keep track of kids when they're sending text messages or using messaging apps. The next trap on the list to talk about is identity theft. And identity theft is important. Identity theft is becoming more prevalent these days. It's becoming easier and easier because of the amount of information we all tend to post on social networks and other places. ID theft occurs when you divulge too much information, and then the thieves will gather that information and do a number of things with that information. For example, kids are 51 times more likely than adults to have their identity stolen. Why? Because a child isn't going to use their social security number for quite a while. When you're born, you get your social security number typically, and then maybe 14 or 15 or 16 years later, a child will get a job and then start really having an employment history. But after 14 years, there could already be a work history in place because public information can be used to create a social security number that's a duplicate of your newborn, and then someone steals the identity and works for 12 years using that identity. And then when your child turns 16, you figure out or determine that someone else has been using their social security number. And the challenges with this is that people who abuse or are identity thieves will typically kill the credit history of anyone for whose identity they've stolen. And it's very difficult. It even takes years to kind of repair your credit history after having it stolen like this. 27% of children are victims of identity theft by people that know them. It could be a cousin or other relative or a neighbor. So you really do have to be careful. I've heard of cases where a mother has stolen her own daughter's ID and used it for inappropriate purposes. So what should you not do? You should not post your birth date. I would take your birth date off Facebook right now. Don't ever include the year. Don't post your new baby's name or indicate, hey, today's new baby's birth date and her name is this, because an identity thief can gather that information and easily go create a duplicate social security number. Don't post your phone numbers, your address, your kids' names, your social security number, any of your banking information. Don't tell people that you're on vacation. Just basically keep things secret online. If you want to think about it in another way, just post the information you want people to have. And if you want the identity thief to have it, post it. If you don't want him to have it, obviously don't. We have a customer whose name is Carolyn, whose job is Skip Tracer. Her job is to find adults on the internet who've skipped out on their on their on their car loans, on other loans, on paying child support. There are a number of reasons to find deadbeats. And Carolyn basically looks for an adult by going to their children's Facebook or social media accounts and usually gathers enough information to find the parent. So you may be careful about this as a parent, but kids are not that careful and they can expose you. I'm not suggesting that you hide illegal activity, of course, but you should hide all of the information you don't want an identity thief to have. There are a couple of solutions out there that do a very good job tracking you. LifeLock is a solution that we're aware of. I use LifeLock. Legal Shield has a product called Identity Theft. Basically, every social security number that you want to track, either of these two entities will do a background check, and then they'll do an ongoing monitoring of your credit and of any activity with your social security number. Now, there are other ways that you can check on your credit. For example, once a year, you can go to annualcreditreport.com and request a credit report for every person in your family based on social security number. That's free. There are other services like Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax where you have to pay for those services. So you can either choose one or the other. One of the benefits of Experian, and I don't use it, so I'm just telling you, you can scrutinize the soft hits on your credit report. A soft hit is when anyone makes an inquiry on your report. So the other credit or reporting agencies may or may not report soft hits. Experian does, so they are the most thorough. Then if someone has done an inquiry on your credit and you don't know who they are, it's not the doctor, it's not it's not Dillard's or some other department store, and you don't know who it is, it's not the car dealer where you were buying a car, you should check them out and see what's going on, because once they get a little bit of information, your identity can easily be stolen. The last thing we're going to talk about on the webinar today, before we open up to some questions, is social networks. We kind of left the best for last, perhaps. Twitter and Facebook started off where people were telling everybody everything that they were doing, including what they had for lunch. Instagram was famous for people taking a picture of all the food they ate. So we've become very open as a society in posting a lot of information online. Only 30% of parents actually check their child's social profile. I highly recommend that you become a friend to your child so that you can get access to their posts. That's one way to kind of keep track. There are children, however, that create duplicate accounts on Facebook and give mom and dad one account, and then everybody else gets the real account. So you have to be careful there. The top 5 social networks out there are Facebook, and oddly enough, YouTube is number 2. This is based on number of users. So the reason I talked about YouTube earlier today is because YouTube is very prevalent. But you got Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn. These are the top 5 social networks. And kids generally have access to more than one social network. In fact, there are some other social networks like Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, Ask.fm. These are other social networks that you may not be aware of or you may not be tracking, but your child is using them. One of the challenges today that we've seen is that college admissions boards and employers are now checking social network profiles to look for bad behavior or good behavior, to look for bad habits, to just kind of get a feeling for what the applicant is going to be as a student at the university or as an employee. This can be quite detrimental. What are some of the things you can do? Well, go Google yourself. Google your child. Google and see what comes up with respect to people in your family. So check your digital trail. And when you're on a social network, limit your profile's searchability. Don't let the public view your profile, because that's when a college admissions board or an employer can look at your child's profile. Only let your profile be viewable or searchable to your friends. Keep your profile photo appropriate. Don't put things in your photo that you want to be kept. Control who can contact you. Just let friends of friends and not everyone contact you. And remove past posts if they're inappropriate, from public view. The other thing is take control of who tags you in your profile. If an inappropriate photo is taken by somebody else, they can still tag you and then you're visible. So don't let others tag you in photos. Limit that ability. Filter your friends' network. Look at who your friends are friends with to determine if anybody on there is going to be a threat to your own child. Make your Twitter account permission only if you want to limit it. Change your Twitter name so it isn't your first and last name. Change it to something different. The last thing we'd recommend is think about everything you post online before you do it. And be aware of the things that you're posting, because sometimes you might be saying something that you don't know what it really means. As a joke there. There is an app that we found it's called FaceSaver. It searches your child's Facebook account, looks for activity, photos, posts, comments, things that were liked, and then flags them and tells you which ones seem to be maybe a little sketchy. So it is an app that helps you kind of determine how clean, quote unquote, a child's or teen's Facebook page might be. That's another tool that you can use. But again, I'm a broken record here. There are tools, social network monitors, that let you as a parent keep track of your child's activity on a variety of networks. NetNanny Social will keep track of those that you see here. It is the most robust in that regard. It keeps track of more social networks than any other. And what you can see as a parent is you'll see who your children's friends are. You'll see what your child says. You'll see what people say about your child. You'll see all photos that your child has posted. And this is for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, Pinterest, Google+, and LinkedIn. NetNanny, to kind of wrap up, NetNanny has been winning a lot of awards. We're working very hard to be the product of choice. We are well known because the product has been around since 1995. One of the things that we're doing, though, to make it even easier to use is we're integrating all of our products into the same administrative portal. So you'll have NetNanny everywhere. Basically, when you want to make changes to your child's profile, you'll go to one dashboard on the web. You'll set up a profile for your child. And then if your child has an Android device, if they have a Mac, if they have a Windows machine, you can make settings for your child, hit go, and all settings will replicate to every device or every PC that your child is using. That is currently available for Windows and Android. We will be adding Mac support in the next 90 days. And basically, as I've described, you'll have a dashboard where you can set up your child's profile, include all of the settings that you want, and then they're all replicated throughout wherever your child's devices may be. I do appreciate your time. I'm going to turn the time now to RJ for a couple of things.
All right, thanks, Russ. Appreciate that. Now's the time for questions and answers. We've already got a couple questions here on the side, but as Russ is answering these questions, be sure to keep on asking, and we'll be sure to get as many answered as possible. Looks like we have a question here from Alejandro from Mexico. Do you want to take that, Russ?
Alejandro is asking what he can do to protect a child using a Symbian device. And in fact, there are very few solutions out there for Symbian because Symbian is not one of the most popular operating systems anymore. It was years ago, but now if you consider the number of Android and iOS or iPhone out there on the market, I think the combination of those two operating systems accounts for maybe 85% of all cell phones or smartphones. So the challenge that you will have with a Symbian operating system phone is that there just aren't that many apps for you. My recommendation is to switch and get a cheap or inexpensive, maybe Android device or a low-cost iPhone, and then you'll have a lot more choices because developers like us have to follow where the market is, and we've followed Android and iOS. So let's take the next question. Someone asked the question about SpectreSoft. SpectreSoft is a very thorough type of monitoring solution. We know SpectreSoft very well. It gives you the ability to check every single thing a person does on a computer. That means every keystroke they type, every website they visit, every email they look at, every password. It is basically the ability to look at every single thing that happens. Mouse movement, keystroke, application used. These applications are used a lot in financial institutions where big organizations are worried about fraud and they want to track their users' every move. But there are some cases where a parent has the need because a child is exhibiting a lot of unusual behavior, they'll have the need to track every single movement of a child on a device. And that's when you want a product like SpecterSoft. The products are usually into the $100 range or $80 range for cost, but if you have a severe issue, it's well worth it. The next question is, how can I download NetNanny web browser? Well, the question is, on mobile devices, we've developed a NetNanny browser for Android and for iPhone, iPod Touch, and iPad, basically because mobile devices are not like Windows and Mac machines or PCs. They are different. Their operating systems are different. In order to do what we do on the Mac and on the Windows computers, we had to create a separate app, a safe browser. So if you want to use NetNanny for Android or NetNanny for iOS, you can go to netnanny.com and download the Android version. You can go to the iTunes store and find the iPhone version. But in this case, it is a safe browser. We basically created a browser to replace Safari, to replace Firefox, to replace Internet Explorer, or any other browser you might use. You use the NetNanny browser because it has the filtering capacity built into it. Next question. How does NetNanny Social communicate my child's activity? NetNanny Social is a dashboard that parents will log into. Once you've configured it to follow your child in all the social networks, you can log in anytime and look at your child's friends, look at your child's posts, look at your child's photos. However, every time you get a regular report, which you can indicate in NetNanny Social, you can get a weekly report to see who all the new friends are, to see all the people that have been who have unfriended your child. If there's any kind of dangerous activity, if someone is saying negative or derogatory or mean things to your child in a post on Facebook, for example, keywords are then flagged and an email is automatically sent to you the day that it happens. So you receive alerts on the fly, you receive weekly reports, and or you can log in anytime. How do you limit tagging in your profile? If you'll send me that question via email, I'll indicate the steps to do so. I don't remember them off the top of my head. It's just a setting within Facebook. And that was a question from Laura. What happened with BlackBerry? Well, Pedro asked what happened to BlackBerry. Blackberries were very commonly used in corporate environments. There were a lot of kids who received a BlackBerry as a hand-me-down, perhaps from a parent who got a new one. But BlackBerry has never adopted an open operating system, and so software vendors haven't really developed apps for the BlackBerry. It's kind of become a niche product for big companies who only need certain functionality. And basically, BlackBerry as an operating system is on the decline, serious decline. I don't expect it will do well in the long term. Someone asked, will I be able to get a version of the webinar? Yes, you will. Everyone who has attended, who signed up and registered and is attending this webinar will get an email in the next day or so. It will have a link to a recording of this webinar. And so you'll be able to go look at it, play it back, share it, etc. Let's see. Does NetNanny for Windows monitor or block photos that might be sent through messages? NetNanny for Windows does not monitor messaging apps, and it does not monitor texting. So really what NetNanny for Windows does, it is an internet filter when a child is browsing. It doesn't have the ability to monitor apps that are on the Windows computer. Let's see. Let's go to another question. Yeah, someone had asked, I mentioned earlier that sometimes a child will create a Facebook account just for their parents to view. They usually do this when they're hiding their behavior. And they'll create another account where they tell all their friends they are and where they post all the other information. The only way you're going to know if that's happening is by doing searches in Facebook for your child, for anything that they might post, or go to their friends' pages and see if they've friended your child under another name. In the case of NetNanny Social, you do have to get your child's permission to log in one time to their Facebook account. Someone had asked about whitelisting applications. Whitelisting means to put applications on an approved list. Blacklisting means to put applications on a blocked list. For Android, we have an app manager. So NetNanny for Android will let you as a parent determine which apps on the Android device you want your child to use. Basically, when you install it, it does an inventory of all apps on the device. And then as a parent, you log into the admin console, wherever you may be, wherever you have a browser. You'll see a list of all the apps on your child's phone or tablet. You click on the ones you want them to have, click on the ones you don't want them to have, and you hit save. Within a minute, wherever that tablet or phone is, it will be updated with those settings. And all new apps will be quarantined until you as a parent have a chance to review them and approve them. That type of app management is available for Android with NetNanny for Android. That is not available for iPhones, iPod Touches, or iPads because of the restrictions that Apple places on consumers using their devices. However, if you have a need to manage 5 iPods, iPads, or iPhones, we have another solution we've built for companies which will let you do what I've just described for Android. You do have the ability to monitor apps, install them, block them, etc. But Apple has a restriction for app management on their devices right now. In terms of Windows and Mac, you basically have to not give your child admin rights on your computer. If a child has administrator rights on a computer, they can download anything. If you as the parent become the administrator, and by the way, we have a blog on netnanny.com/blog about giving your child or limiting your child from admin rights. You can go there and read more about this topic, but don't give your child the ability to control the Windows or Mac computer that they use. Limit their functionality so you can keep track of the applications that they're installing. I think I need to turn time back over to RJ.